Power's out of here.
What, you saw the pool in front of my house?
Yeah.
You mean right
I
now?
called them on Saturday.
It's got wires.
It's kind of what I think. The wires are holding it from falling into the road, so.
Well,
then it's good. Okay. Are we recording? Yep. Oh. Well, then I got 7:31. Let's call this meeting to order. At 7:31. Start with prayer and touch. Our Father, who art in heaven.
To flag the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Cosgray,
Present.
Keller,
Present.
Reedy,
Present.
Foreman,
Present.
Mccreary,
Present.
Schaffner,
All right, everyone's present. First item, approval of the February 28th, 2022 minutes.
Foreman read them, everything looks good. I move we approve them as written.
82nd.
All right, discussion. Roll call.
Cosgray,
Yes.
Foreman,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
McCreary,
Yes.
Reedy,
Yes.
Schaffner,
Yes.
All right, this will be approved as written. Next is approval of the agenda. I think all of our ordinances made it on here. So I've got no amendments. If no one else has, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Foreman moves we approve the agenda.
82nd.
All right, discussion. Roll call.
Cosgray,
Yes.
Foreman,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
McCreary,
Yes.
Reedy,
Yes.
Schaffner.
All right, we have an agenda. First is visitors, none in the room with us, none online. So we'll move on to village administration reports. I will keep mine quick. Most of my comments are going to be in planning and zoning commission because it seems like that's all I've been doing the past 2 weeks. So under new business, we'll have a discussion on some annexation stuff. And then I'll update everyone in planning commission about the preliminary plat that was part of planning commission last week. We'll also note, I sent out an email today to Terry to send out. It is March Madness. Yes, I see other people with hands up. I know a lot of employers complain that there's lost productivity. I embrace it. I think it's a good time to build teams and to, relax a little bit. It's out there. And I've told Terry for years now that we've done it. If lunch goes a little long because a game is close, or we stop 5 minutes of work to listen to the last 2 minutes of a game because it's close and it's going to break someone's bracket, I think it's good for team morale. So everyone got a link to do some brackets. If they do them, cool. If they don't, hey, it's everybody's choice. But that's just the way I kind of roll with March Madness. So I think did everyone on council got the link too?
No, I didn't send it to him, but I will.
Do you guys want the link?
Sure.
All right.
Good.
So join, and I use the ESPN app to do it because it calculates and tells you everything, and I don't have to grade papers essentially to see who's doing well. But and with that, unless anybody has any questions, I'll pass it off to Terry until we get to planning commission.
I sent out earlier today on the project updates where we're at on them. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think the most important one that I'm really excited about is the Coomer Brown Fremont Water Loop. We should have all of the residents on their new service by the 1st of next week. So we'll be pulling samples. Everything went along pretty well. We had one snafu with an older hydrant, which we're working on now, which has nothing to do with the quality of the water. So that project's coming along really well. Also on Thursday, I have 2 pre-construction meetings. One for the streets will be paved this year, and the other one for the OPWC Park project that we got in 2021. And you'll notice this is the timeline on my document that I'm going to stick with so that we can get the majority of the work over by the swimming pool done before opening day at the swimming pool. The only other thing I'd like to talk about is we've alluded to it last Tuesday. Hansberger, we had quite the leak that took a long time to fix. I think the guys the team did an excellent job. We had one thing right after another happened during the digging and trying to fix the break. I think it was a good learning experience for the new members of our team. I came over around 11 o'clock on Tuesday night, and one of the new guys was in the hole with Joey, learning how to work there, and the other one was passing tools. So that's kind of what we like to see. So, you know, while it is a critical break and a pretty big one, probably, it was a good learning exercise for our new employees. So I think they all did a great job. And I tell them, I would rather them take longer and have attention to detail so we don't have to open it up again. So I think they did really well. That's my report, unless you have something else you would like to.
Thing that we'll prize counsel of, and then I'll ask you. So I think at the last meeting, we talked about the construction that's going to go on at 256 and 37 and the detour down Holder Road. And then we had an accident, pretty serious, at 37 and 256 that detoured a bunch of people down Holder Road. And it was apparently a disaster with some of the speeding. What was a concern? My thought, because Terry called me, Saturday morning?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about a potential way to help combat some of that speeding, because it was a kind of a preview of what will come when that intersection gets under there. And my thought was to take the speed limit sign that is on the pole on East Market Street that shows your speed as you're coming in, and put it somewhere on Holder Road, and to, hopefully we don't have to buy it, to ask ODOT to be a good partner and buy one that if they want to take it back at the end of the construction, they can do it. So we have one of those pointing both ways, because we got the data from the one here that it does slow people down. It's not going to be a perfect solution, but it should help. So we know that's coming. So my follow-up is to have the conversation with ODOT that I want to spend the
I
money.
haven't had the conversation with ODOT, but I've already ordered the sign.
Okay.
So the cost of the sign, I think, is something that Brian and I figured we could find the money, but I will have a conversation with
If they
ODOT.
want to reimburse it for us,
Yeah.
great. If not, we'll have it. But that's,
Right, but we will have the sign ready for that construction.
it was kind of a preview. And so.
And we can use it. I think the chief, and I don't want to speak for him, but when we first talked about this radar speed sign, I think the chief wanted to get more than one anyhow, because we had a couple of areas in the village. So having another one in our inventory would be very useful, I think. So,
Is this with solar?
yes, they're both
Is it
solar.
on a portable device?
Yes, we
So-
have a,
Or this one's mounted to the pole, that one portable?
that one that's mounted to the pole has a portable device to put on it. And the new one that I ordered a portable device and solar. Yes.
So the next question will be just where do we put them on Holder Road to make them the most effective? So, but okay, that's all. I have. Okay. Anything else for Terry? If not, we'll move on.
How big was the water line on one part?
Um,
The one that broke?
You know, I think it was
Is that an 8-inch?
it was either a 6 or 8, Rick. I'm not quite sure, but they really put the water out. And once it broke, it was like, wow, it just was very important. There was a lot of pressure there. Let's say they don't have trouble with their water
And the
pressure.
condition of it was
Condition
above
of it,
average, below average?
about average, and really kind of surprising to me. But if you remember right, we talked about when they did Market Street, when they did, meaning ODOT paved it. what happens is that vibration on the infrastructure below the ground is sometimes pretty extensive. And I believe, if you remember right, if you look where the leak is, it's right where those 2 new houses went in. So there was a lot of construction and et cetera over there. So you could take maybe a little leak and it be exacerbated because of the vibration. Yeah, and that's probably what happened in this case. Sometimes it's kind of hard once you get the hole open and everything's blowing out. It's kind of hard to
I
say.
can't even see the pipe because it's underneath 3 feet of water.
Yeah.
Got it.
Perfect. So, yeah.
Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, Brian.
I don't have anything else to add tonight after my reports.
Do you want to talk about the pool? How you're,
Oh, I guess I could give an update about the pool. We have advertised through the town crier. We posted it on our website. I saw the ad in the water bill. Where else? Oh, where else did I know? I can't, there was another place too. I can't think of right now offhand. But so far I have gotten 4 applications so far. 3 for lifeguard positions, 1 for front desk. So that's coming along. I've been in contact with the vending machine company, so they can, last year, if you recall, we didn't have a concession stand. They put in, we had a company come in and put a couple vending machines out at the pool. They're going to do that again this year, and I got them on board to come in and do those inspections and do some maintenance work on those now, instead of waiting until the pool opens, because last year we didn't get them until what, June? It seemed
yeah,
like.
it's like,
It was after we opened, I know that, so I put them on the radar right away.
When we advertise,
Hmm?
what's our age limit for lifeguards?
I believe 15 and up.
it is 15.
Would we get more if we went down to 14?
I don't know. I would have to look to see if we can certify somebody 14.
I just have an opinion for municipality, 14 and older, you can be a lifeguard. You can't work chemicals or anything like that, but 14, 15 years old.
Well, then I will have to, there you go. The other thing is that the lifeguarding, we're gonna have at our pool with Pleasantville's lifeguards also. So Dave's setting that up with it. Every year they have to be certified, so. Okay, well, then that's your answer. We changed the.
Change the, okay.
to 14.
Yes, our pool's big enough to host the certifications. So we have, last year, this wasn't Pleasantville. There was, I think, people from certified lifeguards for Millersport and some other surrounding areas that had a pool to certify lifeguards. So we got that with that paperwork. That process is going on now too.
Just for knowledge, we not have some a business or anything that wants to do the concession stand? Why did we go with?
Anybody that wants to do it. I even went to the Park and Rec Board and asked if any of the organizations that are out there, if they would like to do it for a fundraiser, which we would pay for because you need a license, but nobody wants to do it because of the commitment of manpower and et cetera. And the last person that we had do it was Schaffner's, and they quit doing it maybe the second year I was here.
Yeah.
They did that, or I thought
No, it was Schaffner's.
they did it? I thought the people who.
So-
Should we offer it to the 3 new businesses in town, just as an option? So that it's out there, they may not know it's an option. We've got this farm cafe coming in. We just offer it maybe, or discuss it with them.
Sure,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Because there's them, there's the
Absolutely.
bakery, there's.
It might help them draw attention to their restaurant as well, so.
Anything else for Brian? Brian, you got anything else?
Nope.
All right. Jeff,
One new piece of legislation on the agenda for the first reading, and that is an ordinance to amend the traffic control map to provide for no parking on a portion of Short Street. That's been through committee. One piece of legislation on for a second reading, and that's the rezoning of 0 South Main Street, 17.476 acre parcel, and then no third readings, and then 2 table ordinances. And that's all.
Moving on, finance.
Okay, Mayor, we met tonight at 6 o'clock, very short meeting. Brian went over the finance and everything seemed to be in good working order. So, and our next meeting is on the second Monday in April.
All right, service.
Service hasn't met since the last meeting, and our next meeting is going to be on the 28th, 6 o'clock.
All right, safety.
Yes, Mayor, we haven't met since last month. Our next meeting is the 28th of March at 6:45 following service.
And rules.
We met tonight at about 6:40. We discussed the rules of council and how some of the rules of council are going to be changed or brought to council at some point for changing. And we talked about some annexation processes. Our next meeting is April 11th after the finance.
Moving on, police department.
Not too much to report. We're receiving applications for part-time and auxiliary officers, reviewing those. We did, some of us attended some use of force training, which is part of the CPTs that were mandated by the state to have every year. And other than that, we're all pretty good.
Question for Deputy Chief. All right, fire board.
Our next meeting is this Thursday of this week. However, I did go to the fire department last week and met with Casey Farmer and Chief Boyd. They gave me a tour, kind of got me up to date prior to the first meeting that I'll be attending. So this Thursday will be the first meeting that I'll attend.
Very cool. Moving on, Planning and Zoning Commission. We had a meeting this past Thursday. There was supposed to be a BZA meeting that got delayed for a quorum issue. On the Planning and Zoning Commission part was the preliminary plat for the development back behind Tremont and Dorchester. We did not review that or approve that in discussion that actually started before the meeting, where I noticed a thing and was asking Robert Landis about it. Their plat, it wasn't quite to where they want it to be approved yet. Because once we approve a plat at Planning Commission, you can only make minor deviations from those plans. And they hadn't solidified yet on all of the parcels, and in particular, some of the multifamily buildings, how they're going to be divided. So instead of reviewing it, and then if committee approved it and they want to change some of that, they got to go back through the process again. They asked us to go ahead and they withdrew it from consideration right there, asked them to give us some more time so that they could finalize a few things with their engineering firm to make sure everything was pretty rock solid before they submitted it. You know, you got one right underneath. Yeah.
Well, that's fine. You're good. You're good. Brandon.
I'll just call you out in the meeting.
Just mockery public.
Yep. So we did not review the plat because they're still deciding a few things and just weren't ready for us. Didn't want to have to, if they changed their mind on it, have to go back through that process again and resubmit it.
So when that's available, when that is in its final state, will that be available on the website for the public to view?
Yeah, so what I've been doing is once they resubmit it, when we post the meeting under the meeting minutes, and then I've been trying to do it on the public announcement side too, linking to the documents that they submit so that it's there and everybody can see. So we did not have that. We did discuss ponds at Planning and Zoning, and there will be, we actually sent to Jeff to send to council some recommendations, concerns with ponds. When we got into ponds, we realized that ponds could be everything from your small koi pond to your large 1 acre pond that you can catch giant catfish in. What the commission came up with is a tiered process that every pond shall get a permit, and the permit's going to be no cost. The idea of doing that is so that it can be evaluated. If it's a small pond and it's not very deep, and I think we chose, what, 18 inches?
250 gallons, 2 foot, less than 2 foot.
Less than 2 foot. Basically, if a toddler falls into it, could they stand back up and not drown? No further action is required. If it's deeper than 2 feet or starts to have lots of gallons of water,
To 1,000.
which I think we figured out was a 6x5 pond, which is pretty big, up to how many gallons?
1,000.
1,000. Then the planning commission reviews that. Again, the no cost planning commission reviews to make recommendations. And then if it's over that size, which is where you're getting into your larger in-ground fishing type ponds, that we were going to send to BZA
BCA for variance.
for a variance type of situation evaluation. So that way we addressed everything, hopefully. Detention basins and retention basins, we didn't address in it because those are part of specific build plans. So this is really for if I want to put a pond in my backyard or on my 5-acre lot or wherever, how it goes. And it was actually a lot harder than I think we thought it would be.
Mhm.
Because, I mean, you go to Lowe's or Ace and pick up a koi pond for $100. But we didn't want to exempt that, but have a kid could fall in and drown in one. So, this is one of those that it'll go to Jeff. We didn't want it in the zoning code. So it's council. This is their recommendation for an ordinance to kind of do this. And so that we'll see what's out there. We might not have any permits in it, except for one giant pond that's going in. Where we might have a lot that come in and we might have to adjust, we don't know. So that will be coming probably for the next council meeting. So even though we didn't have the plat, we had a long discussion. And ponds discussion has been over the last 4 or 5 meetings as well. So, all right. Told you my planning commission meeting would be longer than my talk. Any questions about those right now? All right. We'll move on then to tree commission.
We met on Thursday night. The new director of ODNR for our district was present at the meeting. And he just really came along to introduce himself, so committee can meet him. Also present was R.C. Wise, who is on the planning committee for Mount Vernon and Gambier's Tree City USA celebration. So he explained to everybody exactly what was going to happen. That is towards the end of the month. They're putting on a celebration together jointly in Mount Vernon. Also, we discussed, we received the tree grant, as you know, from ODNR. So this week, I will be sending out letters for bids for trees. The trees will be trees that we purchase, that they deliver, and that they install. So they'll be doing all 3 things. So it won't be bring the trees, drop them on my parking lot, and us have to, the tree committee having to install. So, so as soon as that goes out, then we'll go ahead and get those. There'll be 15. We figure between maybe 13 and 15 trees we'll be able to order with the money we've got. Plus, we have also 5 other trees that Steve has gotten that will be planting this summer too, or this spring. So the kicker is that if we have an area that's going to have a tree, you're going to get a letter. So you know what you're going to be getting at your place. So that's kind of all I have for the tree commission. So that's all the information I had for the tree commission then.
It's their blessing.
Yeah.
All right, that's it right down there.
All right. Records commission, no update yet. So move on to any motions.
I have a draft of the motion, so I'd like council to entertain. the issue that was discussed at the end of the rules committee meeting, that's authorized for council to consider authorizing a particular parcel. I went ahead and wrote out the motion. It's done simpler to do it in that fashion. If council desires to consider granting this particular parcel permission to continue to hunt on their property upon annexation to the village. Again, I'll prepare a draft ordinance for council's regular consideration, but this is just for this particular parcel if council desires to make a motion to address it in this fashion. So,
Okay, are we suggesting that we would like to make a motion on this ordinance and adopt it by emergency?
well, it wouldn't be an ordinance. It would just be simply a motion for council to consider. So, and it's still up in the air. The update is this. The property owners have indicated to the adjacent potential developer that they're willing to consider annexation if they were still allowed to continue to hunt on their property. It's a 28 acre parcel. I talked to the chief about it earlier. He walked that parcel before. They had an elder lost person alert, and it was believed that that person may be in that area. So he walked that and he said it's a beautiful parcel. It's very wooded. It's very conducive to hunting. And so with that large of a parcel, he didn't see an issue with regard to village council considering granting this particular owner or these owners the ability to continue to hunt on it if they do annex any village. Right now they can hunt because they're not in the village. So they can do whatever they want to do with it. This would just extend that privilege, basically that permission to them if they cooperate with the annexation process and to the village. And I also included language because I talked to the chief about that also. And to make it clear, and I'll include this language in the draft ordinance, that any owners that are willing to do that would still have to abide by all hunting rules and regulations. So, because there are certain safety regulations in place, regardless of where property is located, including not discharging a firearm within so many feet of a residence, that sort of thing.
And this will, an eventual annexation agreement would incorporate these provisions, but this would help those owners in making that decision to annex, give them a little bit. Council has already tacitly approved what they're asking for.
And I'm wondering if it shouldn't be handled much the way farm animals are. I mean, you can't have a cow in town, but if we're going to annex a farm, we're going to let them keep a cow into it.
And we have did that in the past.
We've done it informally.
Yes.
Yes.
In the past. So
I mean, that I had horses was one of my reasons initially for not wanting to annex, because I didn't want to have to worry about whether the next.
Right. And the difference there is a horse versus discharging a firearm.
Right.
Yeah. Though both can kill you.
Size comes more into play.
Yes.
And again, this is just if council wants to entertain the motion, just for this particular case and this particular parcel.
So is there something you need from me tonight?
Read it.
That motion.
Foreman would like to make a motion to authorize current property owners of a current 28.63 acre parcel number 02100676000, Tim and Laura Gold, to continue to hunt on their property upon annexation to the village of Baltimore, provided that the owners abide by all state and local hunting rules and regulations, and provided that the owners voluntarily cooperate with the annexation process. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? We've already had a little bit. And I'm gonna need that back because Brian's gonna want that for the minutes.
No, Terry's
There's
gonna.
only one copy and I have it.
Want to take a picture of us?
All right, any discussion? I should say further.
I was gonna say, give me that paper.
All right,
Okay, Brent, I'll make sure you.
roll call.
Okay, let's see. Foreman,
Yes.
Reading,
Yes.
McCreary,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Joffman,
Yes.
Cosgrave.
Yes.
All right, 6-0, motion carries.
Thank you. That'll go a long way to working with these particular property owners in the annexation process. So
Any other motions? All right, moving on. First reading, ordinance 2022-07, an ordinance amending section 452.16 of the Baltimore Codified Ordinances, parking prohibited on certain streets and the traffic control map to provide for no parking on a portion of Short Street. And I apologize because my notes from safety don't say who sent this here, so I don't know who the sponsor was. And we just talked about this. From safety, who made the motion to prepare the legislation?
Remember who made the motion to prepare the legislation for the no parking on Short Street?
I don't recall. Okay.
Brian's checking the minutes for us.
I didn't.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it.
Which, what's the
Short
parking on
Street.
Short Street?
It would have happened right before adjournment.
Southside Park Keller did that.
Mr. Keller.
Okay,
So
Good
Keller,
job.
I couldn't remember, but yeah, this come through safety. We're gonna have 3 reading, correct?
Yes.
yes.
Yep, so let's go to the next reading.
All right, we'll leave this on for next reading, March 28th. I want to segue real quick back to our goals. Let me ask this. Do you think we should have in there the clarification that we read ordinances by title only?
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's have that.
Yes.
Okay,
That was discussed.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
okay.
okay. All right, second readings, ordinance 2022-06, an ordinance to rezone 0 South Main Street, a 17.476 acre parcel from suburban single-family residential R2 to planned unit development PUD, sponsor Mccreary.
Yes, Mayor, we discussed this last week in planning and zoning about the property that's located on 158 back in that area and moving from single family homes into the.
And this one will stay on for a third reading. So it will come on for a third reading March 28th. No third readings. Tabled ordinance. I will note that ordinance 2021-24 did have a public hearing on March 7th. It lasted approximately 90 seconds. Many members of council were present or online. And of course, it was live stream. So is there anything we want to do with 2021-24 tonight? Mccreary.
Yes, Mayor, we have been discussing this in planning and zoning, and I would like to bring this from the table and bring it before council to see if council would consider. It is talking about the maximum lot coverage.
The table and bring to council.
Yes, I would like to make that motion.
All right. Is there a second on removing this from the table? All right. I believe that's primary, doesn't get discussion, so roll call.
It doesn't, all the.
Yeah, removing it from the table
Got it.
doesn't get
Got it.
discussion.
Okay. Yes, Keller,
Yes,
Foreman,
Yes.
Yes,
That question, just procedurally, was that table at the third reading? Okay.
Yeah, because we needed the public hearing.
Yeah.
All right,
That's my recollection.
Randy.
Can we discuss this one?
yes, so is there any discussion?
But you got to make your motion to adopt first.
Oh, sorry, I'd like to move to adopt ordinance 2021-24.
Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. Now we can have discussion on it.
Okay.
So we will open it up for discussion. Let's do this real quick. Since Brandy, you're the sponsor and we got a couple new council members, you give the recap, though I think you guys got everything. But then give the recap and then we'll get the discussion going.
So we've been talking about maximum lot coverage. We've been talking about the percentage that's been thrown out there is somewhere between 35 to 40%. So we've discussed just kind of keeping it as is for right now. So that is what our discussion.
Well, this is adding it in. We used to have it. We don't have the percentage. So your R1s would be 35%, R2s.
With this ordinance, they are currently.
Right.
They were, but then
Old zoning code used to have
the
them,
old.
Not this,
but not this current zoning code.
and they didn't have these percentages.
No, they were the same.
I think they were the same.
Actually, I think we've been a little bit more gracious with some.
Yes. And these lot cover percentages, I would like to add, if you don't mind, is not unusual. If you look at any planning and zoning rules and regs, all of them usually have the percentage of coverage. It impacts, for instance, I use the building over by roof on that building. On the building, so we directed all the water to the neighbor's yard, and that was that coverage that they were covering for the water was too much. And so that is why this lot coverage percentage is very important. I'm trying to
So were
reiterate.
these simply just not enforced? Because there are properties all over town that exceed these by quite a bit.
There are, yes.
Prior to me, yes,
Yeah.
probably.
But
And
those
like-
properties are grandfathered in.
Yes,
Yes.
those are,
Yes.
because even Mr. Mager, who's on the committee, said one of his parcels is in violation of this, and he, but recognized the need for it. But yes, if someone has more coverage than this permits right now, we're not going in and telling them they have to tear down a building or anything like
No.
that. It prevents someone from putting up bigger buildings or paving their yard.
I actually.
And I do believe
I have
again,
the percentages.
we exempted from the lot coverage driveway aprons, so the approach apron from the road to the
Which
sidewalk,
usually isn't on the parcel anyway.
right?
Yeah.
And the sidewalk
And the
itself, because we required people to put in sidewalks if they build new. And so it became, wait a minute, we're going to require them to put in the sidewalk and then tell them they have to deduct it. So we exempted that out from the calculations.
So my concern is, as an example, the 2 new houses on Hansberg, would they have not been allowed to be built because they would have exceeded these percentages by a pretty substantial amount? Those are very nice houses. And are we trying to zone out very nice houses?
I don't,
Because we have a lot of very tiny lots in this town. And the best thing we can hope for is that a family buys those, puts on a room addition, adds a garage, maybe increases the patio, and turns that $150,000 rental house into a nice family home. And when they bump into this, it's gonna be, we're not gonna fight City Hall, put the kids in the car, we're moving to Thornville. I mean,
Well,
that's
you
my
could-
concern.
you don't get, I don't think that would be the case, because you always have the option for a variance.
Mhm.
But when you buy that home and you put in a 2-car with paved driveway with a turnaround pad and a room addition in the back, you've now overloaded our stormwater infrastructure. And that's what lot coverage is really about, is the stormwater runoff and where it goes. If we had a better system, we might be able to increase these. And they're not set in stone, but on the smaller lots, you get up to what, 45%? It's 40%.
Yeah, and I can go over these
So-
percentages.
So it's,
Okay.
yeah, so it's 40% coverage on the smallest lot, which is a large portion of
It's a
it.
large portion, definitely.
But all of that water has to go somewhere if it's not being absorbed into the ground on the lot. And in a lot of these areas, we don't have the stormwater infrastructure to take that.
We don't have evidence that that in fact works. If we would put in a storm system, then the water being captured and can be put into our storm system. The water that is getting into our compromised sanitary system is getting there.
This is just for that also. This is for the protection of the person that lives next door to it. A bit running into their yard and creating a muck in their backyard. That's the other thing. So it's
Under our current code,
Mhm.
you could pay your. And I don't think that's what anybody wants.
It isn't, but that then speaks to the point that if we were to concrete the entire village, we've now captured all that stormwater, and now we have the ability to make sure it goes where we want it to go. All the rain or water that falls on permeable surfaces, I hate to tell you, it's going into your sanitary system.
Mhm.
And you need to look no further than Holder Road and East Market Street, where our sanitary system ends. That's where our biggest flooding problems begin, right where the sanitary ends. That is mostly permeable surfaces. There is almost no, it's fields and grass, and there is rampant flooding out there because there is no sanitary system underneath it for it to infiltrate and compromise. So I don't think this does what is being proposed to do. I understand neighbors can have flooding over onto neighbors from one yard to another as well. Granted, adding a roof and gutters can make it worse, faster and more pronounced, but I can just regrade my lot and flood my neighbor's yard easily enough without building any permeable structures. My biggest concern is about the value of properties in town that are currently rentals. The best thing we could have happen would be for young families to buy those and want to add on. When we talked about the houses on Humboldt Road, they bought those lots the day they could build on those lots the houses they wanted without a variance. They would call me every month and say, can we build this house without a variance? And the day I said yes, they bought those lots. He could have raised the price of those lots $20,000 and they bought them anyway. But they would not buy those lots until they could build without a variance. So to
This
say
is
that
not
it could get a
stopping-
variance, I get it.
This is not stopping anyone from building on their lots. To the mayor's point, is that they always have the variance process that they can go through. This is to protect the neighbors, not so much as preventing the property owner. And I think that you need to look at both sides of it, because this is not unusual. If you go to any planning and zoning, you will see percentage of lot coverages. This was something that was left out unintentionally. We're just trying to get it back into the zoning rules and regs.
And keep in mind, so give us the percentage.
If I could, let me just kind of interject here. So it's important to note that the percentages are, so in R1, which is the largest lot size, would be 30% coverage. R2, 35%, R3, previously had been 35. We have suggested that it be changed to 40%. We also said that we're really taking into consideration the infrastructure. So not trying to put any more into the system at this current time until.
And R3s are the smaller lots
Correct.
that you were
correct.
talking
They're the
about, Rick.
smallest lots.
So we did increase that percentage for them.
To 40%.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, I think the water study is gonna help. That we're going to be
The
doing.
measuring meter.
Correct.
I
Meters
agree.
are really going to
I
help.
agree. The process of solving our horrendous problem with the sewer plant starts with metering, but then the solution, the storm system, I don't feel like this helps.
And so on an R3, the minimum lot area is 6,500 square feet. And you don't get to an R2 until you get to 15,000. So at 40%, that's 2,600 square feet of that lot covered by an impermeable surface.
Which I'm pretty much there with a driveway and 1,400 square foot house.
Well, and that's what Ken said about
And
his.
a two-car garage, which means I can't have an accessory building, I can't have a pool, I can't have a patio. And
Well, you can have,
the young family that would buy my house can't either,
you can have a patio if it's a deck.
if it's a deck. And
But if
that
you're
gets into discretion.
If you're gonna concrete it though, that is right. And again, it goes to amount of water seeping through and going on
And at that point.
and coverage. But the converse to that is there's a home, let's just call it in the high school area. And I believe it's an R2 lot.
Mhm.
And there's a house and there was a porch add-on and a back porch add-on, and then there's a pool, and then there's a pool deck, and then there's a shed, and then there's a second shed, and it's approaching a lot of coverage. what's the phrase? Trying to build a castle on a
Postage
on a
stamp.
postage stamp. And it's not easy for the neighbors because all of that runoff does occur and it puts it out into the road as well where we don't have adequate stuff. And so, I mean, it's those things that go into consideration. And yeah, it's not uncommon to have lot percentages
Not at all.
of coverage.
And if you look at our zoning rules and regulations, under multiple families, you will find those percentages are there listed there too. For some reason, they were the only ones that got back into the rules and regulations. The residential didn't. So if you look at our zoning rules and regulations, it does talk about the percentage of lot coverage for multifamily dwellings.
Yeah, I was actually in the planning and zoning committee when we rewrote that entire planning and zoning.
Yeah.
And so when the statements made that they were in the old one, they're just not in the new one, I was there. I don't recall that.
I don't know how we missed it
I
either.
don't recall that.
I don't.
Because I would have had this conversation then back in planning and zoning, because it's a very big concern of mine. Because, you know, when you start looking at how many houses this says you're done, it's a bunch. And when you look at some of the ones that are going to be grandfathered that exceeded already, they're some of the nicest, most expensive houses in town.
But again, those will still have.
I
that. It's the
understand, but
new ones.
We would want more of those.
Well, and most of the ones that are coming in or that we anticipate, they're coming in at R2s or above, I would imagine.
That's a good example.
And-
It's a lot on Mill Street. If this isn't on there, I would love to buy that lot and build a really nice house on it. If this gets passed, then I have no interest in that.
Can't you apply for a variance?
But
Hey,
you
Mayor,
don't- when you do that, if you'll get it.
True, but I think it's almost has to be case by case scenario depending upon where you are.
We just have our best path forward would be that property values would get to where people buy one of these houses that was built in the early 80s, late 70s, that is a really inexpensive house, and basically tear it down and build a really nice house where it was. Like we were starting to get to that point. Several houses were torn down and new houses built in their place. Now, wouldn't it be, they were on large lots, so they would have been affected. But there are a bunch of houses in this town that it would be best for us if they were torn down. And the only way you can afford to do that is to build a really nice house where it was. And we're gonna really restrict ourselves. And the variance process, most people don't want to go through the variance process. I've been through the variance process. I've cited a couple of examples of people who refuse to go through the variance process. It's easier to say no and go do it somewhere else where you don't have to do
So something but chuckle.
hey, Mary, you said we had a hearing and there was it lasted 90 seconds.
Give or take, the only people there were council, and there was one person that attended but didn't want to speak. So the 90 seconds was me starting the meeting, explaining why we were there, and then closing the meeting. And I believe I waited 10 or 15 minutes after the start time to give people a chance to show up.
Okay, and you know, this ordinance has been on the, we've been talking about this ordinance, they've been sitting here on, table for a long time. I call the question on this motion.
All right. End of discussion, roll call.
Let's see. Cosgrave,
Yes.
Keller,
Yes.
Reading,
I abstain.
McCreary,
Yes.
Foreman, no. Schaffner,
Yes.
Wait, who did I miss? Brandy.
no.
No, but I didn't count. I counted.
4 to 1 to 1.
4 to 1 to 1. Mhm.
So it passes. All right. So ordinance 2021-24 will be adopted. All right, moving on. Ordinance 21-25 has its public hearing set for April 18th. Upstairs in the Opera House. Old business, qualified elector appointment. This was also on rules. Jeff, we didn't have any discussion on it. We sent out that memo. So I didn't know if there were questions. We figured since you would be here, council would be better than discussing rules.
Happy to answer any questions. I think it's self-explanatory.
All right. Any other old business? Any new business?
I do.
Yes.
I had sent the email about the noise issue. And
Yes.
I hadn't heard back, so I was unclear, but I just get some background. I got a complaint from a resident who was having problems with, what she believes is a neighbor who is doing some work in a car that's very loud at night, like 11 o'clock at night, and she's trying to sleep. And I had emailed you guys to find out what we had. And what you sent me, I was not clear on what that was. I know it wasn't a true ordinance.
And I was going to respond, and as I started to respond, I figured it was easier to just have it because it became one of those long ones, because this comes up every couple of years. Something pops up around the village where there's noise somewhere. And years ago, council was close to considering a true, what you would call noise ordinance, and then opted not to. There is a disorderly conduct and a persistent disorderly. So if it's happening at 11, you call the police, they go over, they tell them to knock it off. And if they have to keep going over, then it becomes a criminal matter. The reason council chose not to do a true noise ordinance is because that's usually it written as, if you can hear something after a certain time so far away, it becomes a violation. I sit in my backyard on Friday nights, on football Friday nights when I'm not at the game, and I listen to the high school band play. That would violate the noise ordinance. And it's things like that that pop up, why they tend to, the unintended consequences of those types of things. So in the past, we usually said, call the police. Even if there's someone, if they're tied up on something, it gets into the call log, there is a loud noise going on at this address. And then chief or deputy chief can follow up. And then after you get so many times, it becomes a persistent disorderly, and then they can start to address it through a court process. As opposed to a noise ordinance, adopting a noise ordinance, which could have the unintended consequences of silencing the band at halftime.
So a disorderly would include this type of.
Loud or obnoxious noises, yep. Anything that could offend a sensibility.
And they might start holding it down just because they don't want the police to come up to their house unexpectedly, because there may be other things going on.
Yes,
On a repeat basis. Too.
yes.
So,
And the other thing,
A lot of times one visit from the police tends to,
Well, let me ask you this. So what would be, just to be complete, what would be the process to determine how could the council address this to see what the interest is in doing it and actually doing it?
that would typically run through safety committee for discussion in some way to
I
evaluate.
don't know. I've not talked to anybody else. I don't know how anybody else feels about it. As some, I'm glad Chief Tussie's not here tonight, actually, because someone who's had Chief Tussie at my house many times in the past over the noise issues. I don't know, it's something that I'm, it's very dear to my heart, let's just say that, so.
the only thing I wanted to bring up is that you said they weren't ordinances. They are a part of the village's codified ordinances.
Okay, and that's
What
what
I
I wasn't
sent
sure. I
you,
wasn't
hon.
sure
Mhm.
if that was for the
Yes.
police thing or what.
No, it's a part of the village's codified ordinances.
Okay,
and I'm sure I still have a draft of the previous ordinance that was prepared, but not passed by council. So
okay,
I can reprint that and send it to you.
okay.
That'd be a good start. So is that the instruction to put it on safety?
Well, why don't
Agenda.
we wait until Jeff sends it? And if you want it on safety, we can add it, bring it up as new business at the next meeting. We're all here, so then go from there.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any other new business? Any visitors? None? Any last call? Oops and hurrahs from anybody? I'll tell you this, I went to my first horse meeting with my daughter for 4-H and I didn't realize how much parent involvement there was in her showing a horse. It's a lot different than rabbits. All right, with nothing else then, it's 8:26. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Alderman makes a motion to adjourn.
Seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Unanimous voice vote. We are adjourned at 8:26.
Agenda.
No, Brad, when she turns 16, that's how she learns to pull the trailer.
Yeah.
That's how I